Throughout his life, our protagonist Keita believed that a person's future is shaped by how they lived during school. In his mind, someone who spends their school life as a lazy backbencher will probably struggle in adulthood as well. Back in high school, he often spent his time quietly doodling on paper. One day, a beautiful girl suddenly approached him with curiosity and called him Otaku. Years later, Keita is now lazily waiting for his laundry at the Sawano bathhouse laundromat when an irritated young woman suddenly bumps into him and scolds him for wasting his time. It appears that earlier, he was involved with a manga creating job, but for some reason, he has left it as well. Frustrated by his older sister's bickering, he decides to flee the scene to find some peace. Unconsciously, he collides with another young woman, making her drop all her laundry. In no time, Keita is lying on the floor, bashfully buried under a pile of female clothes, grumbling miserably. He is already living a hard-knock life with no job and an unfulfilled dream, making him return home empty-handed, and now he is stuck in an embarrassing situation. Since his glasses fell off during the fall, he is unable to visualize the collider. The young lady graciously finds them for him, and as his vision returns, he is shocked to discover that the person is none other than the same curious high school girl who had a knack for him, Tsubaki Minori. Because apparently, fate looked at him and said, "Not enough suffering yet." A faint intrigue returns on Risa's face on seeing Keita's sudden acquaintance with a girl. For a moment, Tsubaki's face doesn't show any traces of recognition for him, but then she instantly addresses him as Otaku. They both exchange surprised exclamatory statements on running into each other like that. Still, she points out the piece of negligee he is clutching unconsciously. Embarrassed, he instantly throws it away like a hot potato. Amused by the situation, Tsubaki jokes that this must be one of those classic otaku moments, though she cannot remember the exact term for it. Like a true manga fan, Keita immediately blurts out, "Lucky Sukebe," exactly as she expected. Tsubaki laughs and playfully teases him, but Keita awkwardly brushes her off. Right after that, Risa suddenly grabs him and excitedly comments on how attractive Tsubaki is, teasing him for somehow knowing a girl like her. However, Keita acts completely indifferent and dismisses Tsubaki as nothing more than an old high school classmate. So when Tsubaki asks for his help, he coldly walks off toward the bathhouse instead, leaving Risa to deal with her alone. His coldness irritates her, and she feels he is acting too arrogantly for his own good. When she expresses her interest in having a reunion, Risa blurts out about him being idle after leaving his manga job and having nothing better to do than being grumpy. Tsubaki sighs when she learns that he actually pursued a career as a manga artist. He seems quite upset at that revelation and doesn't want to talk about it. Keita treats basic conversation like it's a boss battle. With that, he storms out to the girl's disbelief. Suddenly, Tsubaki's gaze falls on the freshly laundered clothes that he had accidentally left. Meanwhile, a perplexed Keita is sitting in a public bath thinking about how wrongfully Tsubaki is using him because he feels that she is completely out of his league. Even during high school, she was immensely popular, while he was an introvert, always busy with his doodling. But for some strange reason, she showed a sheer interest in his drawing, and that slightly irritated him. She kept on probing him about his hobby and even encouraged him to consider it as a career option. Then, like a bolt from the blue, she slammed her arm on his desk, animatedly taking charge of his drawing pencil. After some scribbles and doodles, she managed to produce a juvenile representation of an animal that seemed like a boar to him, but she insisted that she had drawn a cat. She was completely in awe of her work. However, Keita was not very certain about that. She kept on bucking him up to draw more, despite his steadfast denials. A stunned Keita was forced to admit that she actually ignited a spark in him to become a manga artist. At present, he shuns his past, as well as her thoughts, and hopes that he doesn't encounter her again. But he is in for a shocker as Tsubaki grabs him from behind at the bath's exit. Poor Keita tries to get away from her, but Tsubaki firmly holds onto him and says she wants to catch up over some drinks. Later, at a restaurant, Keita is surprised to see her drinking so heavily, completely ignoring the fact that he drinks just as much himself. Once again, she brings up the annoying subject, and as predicted, he tries to avoid it. She even shows interest in seeing his work, but he highlights his work up to now as insignificant. She can see how he holds himself in low esteem and that he believes that his work is not so interesting to attract throngs of fans. She stares at him stoically for a moment while slurping from her cup. Then she suddenly rises from her seat and pinches his cheek hard so that he can come out of his self-created blues. Therapy was unavailable, so violence became the backup plan. She condemns him for always wallowing in self-pity and turning a blind eye to what's in front of him. When he appears puzzled, she suddenly moves forward towards him, staring at him with emotion-laden eyes to imply that she is always in front for him. He takes a jittery slurp from his glass and is quite surprised by her obsession with his work. He shuns her again when she remains persistent. However, his gaze sticks on her when she flicks her hair behind her ear. Noticing his fixated gaze, she, in turn, looks at him inquisitively, but he apprehensively turns away, avoiding eye contact. In reality, he is taken aback by the ring donned on her middle finger, but he quickly drowns that curiosity in alcohol. Quite late at night, Tsubaki helps him towards his place, as a completely wasted Keita is unable to stand on his own feet. She is quite astonished to see his shabby living area and expresses it openly, and of course, that offends him slightly. Upon entering his apartment, she drops him to the ground in relief. Romance is alive and well, mostly exhausted, but alive. After gathering herself, she gazes around with great intrigue, eyeing various manga art pieces on his walls that represent the taste of a true otaku. With a throbbing head, he warns her not to meddle with his stuff. Suddenly, he becomes nauseous due to overdrinking and throws up. After emptying himself, he feels better and regains some of his senses. Instantly, her wedding band flashes before his eyes, and he feels guilty for hanging out with a hitched woman in the wee hours. He cautiously inquires about her residential area, but she completely ignores that, and instead pulls out his raw manga drawings. Keita is stunned at her audacity and tries to snatch them from her hand, but a cat-like Tsubaki instantly dodges them from his reach. She doesn't understand his reserve since they were just lying idly on the desk, and gets busy going through them. Finally giving in to her endeavors, he expresses his eagerness to get her feedback. She gives him a reasonable score, but wonders why he has left the comic incomplete. Even his manga gave up halfway. Very on brand. He reasons that he had left the job in the middle and shut himself up, even when the editor tried to get him back. He recalls how overwhelmed he felt, and then found solace in a bathroom, where he stayed until sunset, while his phone kept on ringing. Like a bolt from the blue, Tsubaki pounces over him and pins him to the ground. Poor Keita is so flabbergasted by her weight that he can't breathe. His gaze falls on her quivering lips, and then on her wedding band. This man cannot experience one emotion at a time. She stoops over him further and then draws a cross on his cheek. Keita is shocked at her insanity, but she dramatically hoists his drawing pen and sets to complete the comic for him. Soon, she turns around and gets busy doodling and scribbling while he has no option but to wait. After a while, she lifts her head and then hands the pen to him. With a wry smile, he checks out her senseless dawdling without any storyline. Somewhere, storytelling itself quietly left the room. In response, she just smiles at him flirtatiously. Keita just stares at her longingly, having many questions buried in his heart. Especially, that ring is still stuck in his mind like a thorn, but he chooses to wait for the right time. Soon, he becomes involved with his incomplete sketches and gives them a new direction with her help. Meanwhile, she just stares at him with a lopsided grin. The duo sits there in the same position until the first flash of dawn. Keita doesn't seem very satisfied with his performance, but a grinning Tsubaki shows him the brighter side of how time flew when they had been together the whole night. Keita tries to digest her intellectually stimulating remark, but then she expresses her desire to freshen herself in a public bath. Unable to hold himself longer, he indirectly points out that she will be missed by her family members after pulling an all-nighter. She instantly guesses that he might have seen her ring and yawns carelessly, revealing herself to be a widow. Once again, he is left in a stupor, but she advises him to continue with his manga sketching and drives to Slumberland. After a few days, at the public bath entrance, Tsubaki overhears Keita mumbling to himself, and even Risa-ni considers him an oddball when he makes weird noises while tapping furiously on his phone screen. All of a sudden, he heaves a huge sigh of relief, and it is revealed that he has finally managed to touch up the final version of his manga art, whose rough sketch he had drawn with Tsubaki that night. However, his self-confidence wobbles when he is about to upload it online, as it has been ages since he has worked on something like that. Out of the blue, Tsubaki walks over to him to take a quick peek at his suspicious activity. Not ready for this catastrophe, Keita immediately panics, but she quickly smiles, returning to her normal self. The man reacts to human interaction like it's a surprise tax audit. It appears that she has taken quite a liking for public baths and has become a regular visitor since she moved here. Not only that, but she has developed amiable connections with Risa and others, as if she had lived here all her life. He recalls how she termed her widowhood as quite trivial since her husband passed away a couple of years ago and insisted on being called by her maiden name, just like old times. At present, she keeps on chattering with Risa and others and completely ignores him. He wearily slips back on his chair, staring at his phone screen again, and decides not to meddle in her life. She pops up again, curiously peeking at his phone. She wonders whether he managed to upload the manga online. When he denies it, she offers to come to his place for a final touch-up. He completely refuses her offer to her sheer amusement. He clarifies that the other night was just an accident since she helped his intoxicated self home. However, her repeated visits to his place might start rumors, because apparently the drunk vomiting incident was perfectly respectable already. She sighs understandably and then whispers something teasing into his ear. He irritably tries to protest, but she chuckles playfully and squishes his face teasingly. She keeps crushing his face, saying that watching him draw manga the other night was more captivating than anything else. Keita is left puzzled by her surprising comment and feels flustered. But then, an energetic Tsubaki is all set to leave for her part-time job. When Keita inquires about the nature of her job, she is left baffled. He guesses that she might be working in a cafe, and she readily gives in to the notion. Soon she is off, but before that emphasizes to him to notify her about his uploaded manga. It is then that Risa comes looking for her, but seeing that she has already left, puts forward the wedding band that she believes Tsubaki had accidentally left in the changing room. Keita quickly picks it up, intending to return it to her, and leaves the public bath. Look at him suddenly becoming responsible. Character development unlocked. Risa waves to him, quite impressed by his honesty. Soon he can be seen in a cafe waiting for Tsubaki's response, as earlier he had texted her a reminder about her dropped ball. He keeps on gazing at the band thoughtfully, trying to realize the pain Tsubaki might have gone through after losing her husband, but terms himself quite insensitive in this regard. He recalls how once he was reprimanded by the editor at his workplace about showing only his bottled-up feelings in his art, instead of being reader-oriented. He believes that he lacks empathy for others' feelings. He sighs and then quickly reverts to his search for Tsubaki's workplace. But the sky gets inkier, and a dejected Keita is still unsuccessful in his endeavors. He gloomily stares at the band cradled in his palm when, like a fresh breeze, Otaku strikes his ears. To his immense shock, Tsubaki stares at him inquisitively, dressed in a revealing bunny costume. Meanwhile, this man has spent half the story overthinking one ring. The scene shifts to a flashback where a high schooler, Keita, is reluctantly painting a signboard while a carefree Tsubaki sits in the corner, casually sipping on some juice. It appears that she is the one who got him stuck in this mess by loudly announcing his knack for drawing in front of the class. She gazes intently at his flustered demeanor, then playfully teases him about it. At present, Keita points out her wacky-looking outfit, but instead of being bashful, she tries to flaunt herself more. It turns out that she is a proud part-timer at a quirky concept cafe, and Keita finally realizes the reason for its obscurity. The cafe's business model seems to rely entirely on confusion and bunny costumes. Without wasting any more time, he quickly fumbles in his pocket and then produces the wedding band in front of her, condemning her for losing something so precious and emotion-laden. Satisfied, he gives a dramatic pause after letting it all out, donning a somber expression on his face. To his alarm, she raises her hand, where a wedding band is already worn on her finger, implying that the ring in his hand doesn't belong to her. Later that evening, while he is drinking at a bar to forget his worries, Risa calls him to correct his mistake and find out who the real owner of the ring is. After the call ends, he almost hits his head on the table, frustrated with how impulsive he was. Keita realizes he had mistaken one random ring and turned it into a whole emotional story. Suddenly, Tsubaki appears out of nowhere and tries to comfort him with her usual kind words, also thanking him for caring about her. Keita is shocked and tries to explain, but she quickly stops him and offers him a drink instead. He slowly drinks and thanks her in return for helping him get back into manga, despite all the strange situations. He also appreciates not just that night when she helped him finish his comic, but also all the times in high school when she encouraged him to keep following his passion. He suddenly clicks his phone screen and shows her his freshly completed comic. He expresses his interest in pursuing a career in drawing and requests that she find interesting ideas for him to give him a push. Tsubaki recalls the time when she had forcefully gotten him stuck painting a signboard, and it is then that she makes up her mind and types something on her phone. Next, she triumphantly announces that she has finally uploaded his work, which he didn't dare to do. Keita is left in a daze as she keeps on delving into his old drawings and constantly teases him about them. Elsewhere, a young woman named Ashihara is all excited on seeing Keita's work online because she thought he had quit a long time ago. Meanwhile, he is still buffering from the fact that someone else pressed the upload button for him. Once again, the story drifts into Keita's high school years, where he is secretly sneaking a manga in the hustle and bustle of his classroom. Suddenly, he comes across a page where a manga art competition is announced with a grand prize of 1 million. Suddenly, Tsubaki's amused face flashes in his mind, quietly encouraging him to become a manga artist, and he unconsciously slams the book shut, catching everyone's attention. A chuckle slips through Tsubaki's lips as she has been observing him for some time. Her friends exclaim in surprise at her sudden outburst, but she manages to divert their attention. Nothing suspicious at all. Just two teenagers silently having a career crisis in algebra class. But deep down, Keita is compelled to consider it as his career option. At present, Tsubaki quickly gets dressed, and while picking up her wedding band, she recalls Keita's somber face advising her to keep it safe. She swiftly slips it on her finger and then heads towards the laundromat. She is surprised to see him lying down idly, and when she criticizes him for that, he points at his freshly laundered clothes that he had just finished doing. She stares at him thoughtfully and then pulls open the front load's lid. This woman enters every room like she's about to start a side quest. Next, she takes a damp cloth and gently presses it on his face to snap him out of his gloomy mood after his manga doesn't get the response he wanted a week after posting it. He quickly pulls it away and starts blaming himself, thinking about all the things he could have done better before uploading it. She tries to stop him from overthinking by reminding him that he used to be confident and proud of his work. However, Keita still feels disappointed because of the weak response, even though he didn't expect anything amazing after being away from drawing for a long time. He keeps asking her what the best part of his work is, which makes her laugh, especially when he keeps trying to get praise out of her. It appears that Tsubaki is relieved to see him so involved with his work rather than running away from it. To make him feel better, she hands him his favorite packaged cream puff. Next, she tries to boost his confidence by saying his manga truly fits his personality. Keita is not satisfied with her vague review and finds it irrelevant to his work. She casually pops some snacks into her mouth, and then suddenly one lands on her clothes. An abashed Keita quickly turns away, opting to draw a more realistic manga. Suddenly, Tsubaki notices a very popular manga lying on his desk and is hit by a wave of nostalgia since it used to be his favorite guilty pleasure. In a frenzy, he snatches it away from her grasp and then makes a shocking revelation about having an unfortunate experience with that same manga company where he first submitted his manuscript. He painfully recalls how he was pushed into the pits while his peers kept on thriving, namely his contender, Ashihara. Because of that, the same golden manga comic always brings back agonizing memories to him, so he hid it until she pulled it out at that moment. The poor guy treats one old manga volume like it personally ruined his life. Tsubaki is concerned when he flips the comic's page, but then a relaxed smile appears on her face as he decides to face the challenge all over again. He finishes it by late afternoon and is all set to produce yet another exciting one to challenge Ashihara. Tsubaki watches him with great satisfaction as she has been dreaming of seeing this attitude from him. Out of the blue, he receives a message from Ashihara Jun, and there it is. The plot has officially entered competitive trauma revival mode.